Hi everybody, my name is Justin and welcome to Game On. I was just reading The Shunned House. It's one of the few short stories from HP Lovecraft that I don't have in one of my Lovecraft compendiums. It's actually a library book that I had to check out, which has At the Mountains of Madness and The Dreams at the Witch House also in here. And I had to ask the librarian for help on where to find my HP Lovecraft, because the library didn't have too many Lovecraft works. And when I talked to the librarian said that she had heard of Lovecraft, but she wasn't very familiar with who he was or his works. She asked if he was like Stephen King. I said, nah, not really. She asked if he was like Mary Shelley. I said, nah, not really. She asked if he was like Poe, and I said, kind of, but not really. And that got me thinking, if a librarian who dedicated their life to helping people find the stories that they want to read didn't really understand who Lovecraft was, then what about the common layman that's out there on the internet? And today I want to talk a little bit about H.P. Lovecraft and why there will never be another Howard Philip Lovecraft. If this is the kind of video that you want to see more of, make sure to subscribe to Game On and let us know that this is the kind of videos that you want to see more of by hitting that like button and also letting us know in the comments if you want to see more Lovecraft-inspired videos. H.P. Lovecraft was born on August 20th, 1890, into an aristocratic, affluent, white Protestant home. And that is kind of what explains how he was and how his writing is just from the get-go. He was very sheltered. The only other people that he knew were people like him, rich, and basically sheltered children and families that were kept away from the Catholics, the other religious types, anybody who wasn't white. And he grew up learning his xenophobia and his racism. Now, before we continue, I do want to talk a little bit about Lovecraft and that. He is a xenophobic, racist misanthrope. And it wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now. So I understand if people don't want to read his works for the racism, misogyny, homophobia, xenophobia that is in it. I totally understand that. However, there are some interesting parts of his work that once you get past his terrible, terrible xenophobia and racism, that he does have some interesting things to add to literature. You see, he was born, again, into an affluent family, but he slowly lost his richness and his family lost their income once his uncle passed away and he had to sell his very well running business. And because they started losing their money, and because Howard Phillips Lovecraft's dad passed away, he was subjected to many different kinds of sheltering, as well as moving, and his own anxiety attacks that he would get from these things. You see, Lovecraft became an atheist when he learned at a fairly young age that Santa wasn't real. And he thought that if there wasn't a higher power like Santa, how can there be a higher power like God? He turned to astronomy, amateur astronomy. He got himself a telescope and he looked at the stars, something that he really, really loved. Unfortunately, as much as he loved math and science, he was pulled out of school multiple times for his own anxiety and for reasons that his mom had that people might not fully understand. You see, his mom was just as sheltered as he was, and she was kind of worried about the kind of education that he was getting. Not only that, but the anxiety attacks that he would have. So Lovecraft never finished high school. Lovecraft loved the sciences, he loved math, but he did not have a complete grasp of that. Unlike other horror and science fiction writers, HP Lovecraft isn't well educated. That's not to say that he's not educated, but he is miseducated or partially educated. And that is part of his assets, in my opinion. He didn't have a full understanding of the world, and he didn't have a complete understanding of how space and math and physics worked, which was kind of interesting paired with his own phobias of different peoples that weren't white Protestant males, and his different phobias of germs and sickness, and because his dad died as an invalid, so he became afraid of things like that. And he became afraid of things that were bigger than him, but he had no control over. At least if he was a Christian, he could pray to a God. But since he doesn't believe in God anymore, he is a very different author. Not to say that you have to pray to a God to be a good author, but because he became an atheist, because he is an astronomer and somebody who is miseducated, all of those combined is what makes Lovecraft the most interesting writer and author out there, at least when it comes to horror. You see, in 1920, he wrote something called The Crawling Chaos, which is what helped make the Cthulhu mythos. Nyarlathotep is what is put in there, is what he mentioned Nyarlathotep in that. And then in 1926, The Call of Cthulhu, probably his most famous work, and one of his more famous works in 1936, At the Mountains of Madness. Lovecraft is known as something of a cosmic horror writer, but what does that mean? A lot of people don't fully understand what that means. Well, let's take a look at Lovecraft. He died in 1937, March 15th of all, actually, right after Pi Day. And he lived through the Great Depression, he lived through the Great War, and he lived through a time of great scientific advancement and technological advancement. A lot of different chemicals, a lot of different technologies were invented. Even different parts of planets in our own solar system were discovered in his time. There was so much excitement and so much unknown in the world as Lovecraft watched humanity destroy itself in ways it had never done before, because in World War I, no one had died that much in war. It killed so many people. And then we had a Great Depression all at the same time while discovering new planets, discovering new ways to heal each other, new ways to kill each other. It was something that we can't really grasp right now. It's not something that we'll ever see again. We will never see a technological advancement and scientific advancement at the exact same growth rate as he did. And pair that with his incomplete education, and you get prime material for your writing. Because when it comes to Lovecraft, his writing isn't the same as what you might think as horror of like Stephen King. Lovecraft's writing does not have a slasher who is trying to follow you and to kill you. Lovecraft's writing does not have something hiding in the bushes to jump out and scare you. He doesn't have a whole lot of gross out blood, guts. Lovecraft's horror comes from the fact that there is something out there way beyond us that we can't even comprehend, and if we come close to comprehending, we'll go insane. What I really like about Lovecraft's cosmic horror genre is I'm gonna use, like, let's use Jason Voorhees as an example. That's a horror movie, Friday the 13th, and he's trying to kill people. But Lovecraft's writing is so much different from that, because Lovecraft's writing makes you think that you are a narcissist. Who are you to believe that this monster from beyond the stars even cares enough about you to try to kill you? That's something that's completely different from any other horror genre that we deal with as humans. It's, how are you such the center of the universe that this one thing wants to kill you? How much of a narcissist do you have to be to think that this thing cares enough about you to kill you? It doesn't. As a matter of fact, the biggest part about cosmic horror is that these things are so big. Whatever is out there, these cosmic gods, these Cthulhus, these Nyarlathoteps, these Azathoths, they don't care about you because they have so much going on that Earth is just a blip to them. If they destroy Earth, they won't even notice. Nothing can save you. No technology, no religion, no chemical, nothing. Nothing will save you from these things that are so big that humanity is nothing but an ant to them. Does that make them evil? Well, that's interesting. That's something to debate in philosophy. Whether or not you accidentally step on an ant and not realize it. Are you evil because you killed it? That's something up to debate for philosophers. But that's why it's so scary. Look out to the stars. Andromeda is our closest galaxy, a couple 100 million light years away. And there might be something there that can destroy us. But it's so big, unfathomable to even try to comprehend. Our current understanding of math, physics, chemistry, xenobiology can't explain it. And that's why it's so terrifying. It's terrifying because you and me, according to Lovecraft and his writings, are so tiny in the drop of this bucket. They are a drop, not even a bucket. They are a drop in an endless sea. We are a drop in an endless sea, and that endless sea can totally swallow us up, and it won't even notice. You're very insignificant, and you mean nothing. That's why Lovecraft's horror is so different. It's not, I'm scared because of this thing that's chasing me or what could be hiding in my closet at night. It's the fact that once you're done reading Lovecraft, you walk away thinking to yourself, wow, I mean nothing in this large comparative timeline of the universe. And that's why it's kind of scary. There's not really any writers that kind of tackle this issue anymore. We do have some writers. Stephen King does acknowledge HP Lovecraft as one of his many inspirations. Lovecraft lives on. My favorite role-playing game is called Call of Cthulhu. My favorite board games are all Call of Cthulhu Lovecraft themes. I even have, cute Cthulhu tattooed on me, which I know is kind of odd to think that an elder god would be cute, but his works, mainly Cthulhu, is still being viewed to this day. But there will never be another Lovecraft, because there will never be another author that is just like him, set from his misanthropic, xenophobic, racist, affluent Protestant household with an incomplete education of the world, to create such a cosmic horror that leaves us all in dread. I thank you guys very much for watching. I'm posting this on Christmas Eve Day. But if you're watching this after Christmas Eve Day, that's fine too. Again, let us know in the comments what you think about HP Lovecraft. I appreciate you all watching, and game on.